December 26, 1944. The Ardennes forest lay under a relentless winter storm. Trees bent under the weight of snow and the air thick with tension and fear. Inside the Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force, General Dwight D. Eisenhower sat at his desk, eyes scanning the latest situation reports. Every line on the map was a heartbeat, every telegram a potential disaster. The phone rang, shattering the tense silence. His duty officer announced. "General Patton calling from Luxembourg, sir." Eisenhower's hand tightened around the receiver. He had been anticipating this call, but not for several more days. The impossible maneuver, the audacious pivot. The gamble that even the boldest generals said could never succeed. It might already be complete. On the other end, General George S. Patton's voice came through, steady and confident, cutting through the blizzard of uncertainty. For words that would shift the tide of battle were through to Bastogne. Relief washed over Eisenhower, but it was not just relief, it was astonishment. It watched men and machines battle both the elements and a ruthless enemy, holding a critical junction against overwhelming odds. And now, Patton's words confirmed it. The 101st Airborne, surrounded for days, could finally breathe. The corridor to Bastogne was open. Supplies, reinforcements, and hope could finally flow through. This was more than a tactical victory. It was a testament to audacity, genius, and the weight of command. What Eisenhower said next would reveal everything about his complex relationship with Patton. It's the risks of leadership and what happens when one man dares to defy the impossible and succeeds. The storm outside howled, but inside, history had already taken a decisive turn. And in that moment, every commander, every soldier, every American watching the unfolding drama would realize that sometimes miracles come on the edge of audacity. December 19th, 1944. The German offensive had smashed through the Ardennes, creating a massive bulge in the Allied lines. Roads were choked with retreating units. Smoke and frost hung in the air. And the 101st Airborne found themselves surrounded at Bastogne. It's a small Belgian town that had suddenly become the key to the entire Ardennes campaign. If Bastogne fell, German armor could push further west, splitting Allied armies in two, threatening everything the Allies had fought for. At Supreme Headquarters, Eisenhower convened an emergency meeting with his top commanders. The atmosphere was grim, tense, almost suffocating. Reports of disorganized retreats, heavy losses, and enemy momentum painted a picture of imminent disaster. Officers exchanged worried glances, each calculating the impossible. Then Eisenhower asked the question that would define the next crucial days. How soon can we move north to relieve Bastogne? Silence filled the room. Generals debated logistics, supply lines, snow-clogged roads, and exhausted troops. Most hesitated, unwilling to promise what they could not deliver. Then Patton spoke, calm, precise, unflinching. He volunteered to pivot. 3 divisions, disengage them from active combat, and strike north to Bastogne within 48 hours. The room went silent again. This time, not in hesitation, but disbelief. A maneuver of this scale, in freezing conditions against entrenched German forces, seemed impossible. Even Eisenhower, who had seen Patton perform audacious feats before, paused to measure the reality. Could this be done? Was this boldness or recklessness? The stakes could not have been higher. The 101st Airborne's survival, the integrity of the Allied front, and the morale of troops and civilians alike all depended on a single decision. In that moment, Eisenhower understood that the coming hours would test not only Patton's genius, but his own judgment as a commander. December 20th, 1944. The Ardennes was a frozen labyrinth of snow-covered trees and mud-choked roads. Patton's Third Army prepared for a maneuver that most thought impossible. It's a 90-degree pivot of 3 full divisions, disengaging from their current positions and racing north toward Bastogne. Every soldier, every tank, every supply truck had to be in perfect coordination. One misstep could spell disaster. Patton's staff moved with precision. Contingency plans were drawn, alternate routes mapped, and every possible enemy action anticipated. He knew the Germans would strike back relentlessly, and he planned accordingly. Even in the face of freezing winds and blinding snow, Patton inspired his officers, reminding them that boldness and speed could rewrite fate. As the columns began their march, Eisenhower monitored the reports from Schaeff. The tension in the Allied command was palpable. Every hour, messages arrived, delays, mechanical failures, blocked roads. The weather was merciless. Blizzards made movements slow and dangerous. Yet Patton's teams overcame every obstacle. Tanks carved paths through the snow, engineers repaired roads, and infantry units pushed forward tirelessly, determined to reach the besieged paratroopers at Bastogne. Inside Schaeff, Eisenhower balanced hope with caution. He knew Patton's reputation for audacious promises and bold movements, but he also knew the stakes. If Patton failed, the 101st Airborne could be overwhelmed, and the entire northern shoulder of the Allied line could collapse. Yet, with each progress report, a cautious optimism began to form. Patton's preparations were meticulous, his foresight extraordinary. Meanwhile, Bastogne remained in chaos. The 101st Airborne, surrounded, was low on ammunition, food, and medical supplies. Their resilience under fire and extreme conditions became the invisible backbone of the operation. Every soldier clung to the hope that Third Army would arrive. Morale was fragile, but their determination never wavered. Patton's maneuver was a symphony of audacity. Column after column moved through treacherous conditions, pivoting as if guided by a single mind. Engineers cleared paths for tanks and artillery, infantry held flanks, and commanders relayed orders with clockwork precision. The Germans, confident in their encirclement, were about to face a shock unlike any they had expected. Eisenhower watched reports with a mixture of admiration and anxiety. Could one man's audacity overcome nature, the enemy, and sheer logistical complexity? Patton's gamble had begun. Every mile gained, every obstacle overcome, tightened the tension. Allied commanders held their breath. History was being written, one snow-choked mile at a time. Patton's determination, foresight, and unyielding drive set the stage for a miracle. The impossible was in motion, and the eyes of the world, though many did not yet realize it, were about to witness one of the most audacious feats in military history. December 26, 1944. The snowstorm had eased just enough for Patton's columns to push through, yet the landscape remained a frozen battlefield of ice, mud, and shattered trees. The men of the Third Army were exhausted, frostbitten, and tense, but every tank, every jeep, and every soldier pressed forward with relentless determination. Bastogne was no longer a point on a map. It was a lifeline, the hope of thousands of surrounded soldiers, and the turning point for the entire Ardennes campaign. Then, in the late afternoon, it happened. Captain William Dwight's company from the 37th Tank Battalion made first contact with the battered 101st Airborne. Relief and disbelief spread across the faces of paratroopers who had endured days under siege. Supplies, reinforcements, and fresh troops finally reached them. The narrow corridor Patton's army carved through the snow was a symbol of audacity and precision. Proof that what had seemed impossible was now reality. Back at Supreme Headquarters, Eisenhower's office was tense, every second stretching like hours. Then the phone rang. Patton, the words came crisp and unwavering. We're through to Bastogne. Eisenhower's shoulders dropped, the tension leaving his body in a wave of relief. He turned away from his staff for a moment, composing himself. "Say that again, George," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Patton confirmed. The corridor was open, supplies were flowing, and the paratroopers were holding Eisenhower's response blended astonishment with admiration. "Congratulations, George. You did it. You actually did it." There was no time for ceremony. Yet in that instant, the weight of months of tension, planning, and uncertainty lifted from his shoulders. He knew this was more than just a tactical victory. It was a demonstration of leadership, courage, and sheer willpower. The battlefield, meanwhile, remained dangerous. German counterattacks struck with fury, but Patton's forces held the line. Pushing more units through the corridor, reinforcing the paratroopers, and securing Bastogne. Every mile gained, every action taken, highlighted the audacity, foresight, and operational brilliance of the Third Army. By the time reports reached Eisenhower, it was clear. Patton had not only executed what others deemed impossible, but he had done so with a precision and speed that would become legendary. Relief, admiration, and even a hint of personal awe colored Eisenhower's thoughts. This was the moment when audacity met execution, when courage confronted chaos, and when a general truly earned his place in history. The Battle of the Bulge had reached a turning point. Bastogne was relieved. And in that phone call, the complexity of leadership, the burden of command, and the genius of Patton were laid bare for all to witness. The relief of Bastogne did more than save surrounded troops. It reshaped the entire Ardennes campaign. Eisenhower leaned back in his chair, the weight of command heavy on his shoulders, yet now tempered by cautious optimism. The crisis that had gripped the Allies for a week was suddenly turning in their favor. Patton's audacious maneuver was not just a feat of speed and strategy. It was a statement that American ingenuity and determination could overcome even the most daunting obstacles. In private, Eisenhower allowed himself a rare moment of admiration. Patton had executed a plan that few even dared to conceive, disengaging 3 divisions, pivoting them 90 degrees, and advancing over snow-choked roads to relieve a surrounded garrison seemed impossible. Yet, here it was, a corridor to Bastogne, troops reinforced, supplies flowing. Relief was tangible, not just for the soldiers on the ground, but for the morale of the Allied command and the nation. Watching from afar, Eisenhower's mind, however, was not only on success, it was on responsibility. Patton's brilliance came with challenges. His unorthodox methods, bold promises, and sometimes insubordinate tendencies had tested the patience of his superiors before. Could this victory justify granting him more operational freedom, or was it a reminder that even geniuses could not be fully trusted? Eisenhower realized that for Patton, audacity was both a tool and a risk. Meanwhile, the soldiers at Bastogne felt a surge of hope. The paratroopers' endurance and courage had bought them the time needed for Third Army to arrive. Their grit, combined with Patton's aggressive planning, created a synergy that turned the tide. Every man who had dug trenches in the snow fired his weapon under duress. And held the line, could now feel the tangible impact of their perseverance. The strategic implications were immediate. German forces, confident in their encirclement, were caught off guard. Their timetable shattered, their attacks blunted, the Bulge's momentum faltered. Eisenhower's decision to trust Patton had paid off in spades. But beyond the tactical gains, this moment revealed the nature of command itself. It's a delicate balance between trusting brilliance and enforcing discipline, between taking risks, ensuring accountability. Eisenhower's respect for Patton deepened. It's tempered by the awareness that this was a double-edged sword. Patton could achieve the impossible, but he demanded careful management. For the Allies, the relief of Bastogne was not just a military success. It was a lesson in leadership under pressure, a reminder that audacity, when guided by skill and vision, could change the course of history. As news of the breakthrough spread through Allied lines, morale surged. The storm of winter and battle was far from over, but a critical victory had been won. Bastogne was free, the 101st Airborne reinforced, and the momentum of the Third Army unstoppable. In that moment, Eisenhower understood that the audacity of one man had altered the fate of thousands, and history would remember exactly what had been risked, what had been endured, and what had been achieved. With Bastogne finally relieved, the relief of the 101st Airborne sent shockwaves through the Allied command. Eisenhower sat at his desk, quietly reviewing the latest reports, allowing himself a rare moment of satisfaction. The corridors of Bastogne were open, reinforcements and supplies flowing to men who had endured days under siege, and the operational risk that had weighed so heavily on him was now mitigated. In his private notes, Eisenhower reflected on the audacity and brilliance of Patton. The general's foresight, meticulous planning, and decisive execution had changed the course of the Ardennes campaign. What many deemed impossible had been achieved not through luck, but through skill, courage, and a relentless drive for action. Yet Eisenhower also understood the delicate balance required in commanding such a forceful personality. Genius could not be left unchecked. It demanded both freedom and oversight. Public statements were carefully crafted. On December 27th, Eisenhower released an official communique celebrating the bravery of American soldiers and the operational success of Third Army. The relief of Bastogne was heralded as a turning point in the Battle of the Bulge, restoring confidence to both troops on the front and civilians at home. Newspapers would carry the news across the globe. American forces had not only held, but had struck back with precision and speed. Privately, Eisenhower's words to Patton were more candid. He praised the general's exceptional leadership, while reminding him of the importance of following command protocols. Patton had demonstrated the heights of operational excellence, but Eisenhower knew that unchecked boldness could become a liability. Their correspondence reflected the complex dance between admiration and accountability. Trust and authority. The soldiers at Bastogne, reinforced and resupplied, could finally breathe easier. Their courage under siege had been rewarded, and the Third Army's breakthrough ensured the broader Allied front remained intact. The Germans, stunned by the rapid pivot and the sudden appearance of reinforcements, began to falter. What had started as a desperate defensive stand had transformed into a symbol of American resilience and ingenuity. In these hours, Eisenhower recognized a fundamental truth about leadership. Success often required trusting, capable subordinates to act decisively, even when the odds seemed impossible. Patton's achievement was a reminder that boldness, combined with skill and foresight, could shape the outcome of history. Bastogne was more than a victory. It was a lesson in courage, strategy, and the power of one man's audacity to inspire an army. The crisis had passed, but its impact would reverberate. The relief of Bastogne would be studied in command centers, celebrated in letters home, and remembered as a defining moment of American military prowess. And at the heart of it all stood Patton, whose speed, daring, and brilliance had proven decisive. Eisenhower knew he had witnessed something extraordinary, a combination of genius and courage that would leave an indelible mark on the war. With Bastogne secured, Patton refused to pause. The breakthrough was not a moment to rest. It was the opening for a relentless push against German forces. His armored divisions, still braving the snow and mud of the Ardennes, moved with unmatched speed and precision, striking German positions with coordinated assaults that shattered the enemy's momentum. Every mile gained forced the Germans to retreat, regroup, and rethink a campaign that had promised them initial success. Eisenhower, monitoring the movements from Schaeff, felt a mixture of relief and awe. Patton's gamble had paid off, but now it was becoming clear that the Third Army's audacity could redefine the Northern Front entirely. The speed of the offensive was unprecedented. Divisions that had just navigated a frozen, treacherous 90-degree pivot were now pushing forward, engaging the enemy before they could stabilize. Eisenhower allowed himself a cautious optimism. This operation was exceeding even his high expectations. At Bastogne, the paratroopers, once beleaguered and exhausted, now joined the offensive efforts in securing roads, holding strategic points, and assisting in coordination with Patton's advancing units. The synergy between the relief force and the defenders created a momentum that the Germans could not anticipate. Communication lines were re-established, supplies flowed more freely, and morale surged. Soldiers who had been on the brink of exhaustion were now invigorated by the tangible evidence of victory. Patton's operational brilliance shone through every decision. Flanks were secured with precision, artillery supported infantry advances, and armored units exploited gaps in German defenses. Reports from the front painted a picture of rapid, decisive movements that combined foresight, aggression, and tactical brilliance. Each push northward was not just a counterattack. It was a demonstration of American military supremacy, speed, and discipline under extreme conditions for Eisenhower. The second climax was a mixture of triumph and strategic calculation. The Germans had underestimated the audacity and operational capability of the Third Army. Patton's ability to anticipate enemy reactions, mobilize his forces, and execute with near-flawless precision meant that what had begun as a relief operation transformed into a broader counteroffensive, capable of turning the tide of the Bulge. By the evening of December 27th, reports confirmed that German forces were in retreat across multiple sectors, their advances halted, their momentum broken. Eisenhower recognized that Patton's success at Bastogne had not only saved a surrounded garrison, but had set the stage for a decisive, Allied push that could reverse the course of the battle entirely. The courage, audacity, and operational mastery displayed by Patton and his men had reshaped the battlefield and restored hope to the Allied command. In the days following Bastogne's relief, Eisenhower's perception of Patton began to shift profoundly. The audacity that had once frustrated and concerned him was now tempered by undeniable results. Patton had demonstrated under impossible conditions that speed, decisiveness, and foresight could turn potential catastrophe into triumph. Eisenhower realized that commanding genius required a delicate balance, trust without blind faith, oversight without stifling initiative. Patton's continued offensive into the Ardennes reinforced this lesson. Every mile gained by the Third Army tested German defenses, disrupted their supply lines, and forced enemy commanders to react to a strategy they had not anticipated. For Eisenhower, it was a lesson in the power of initiative, and placed in the hands of a capable, daring commander, the results could be extraordinary. The relief of Bastogne was no longer just a momentary victory. It was a template for operational excellence. The relationship between Eisenhower and Patton evolved. Private correspondence, diary entries, and staff reports revealed a new equilibrium. Patton's successes granted him more operational freedom than any other commander, but Eisenhower remained vigilant. There was mutual respect, tempered with caution. Patton had proven he could perform miracles when given the objective and room to maneuver. But the responsibility to maintain discipline and align with Allied strategy remained. Meanwhile, the broader strategic picture improved dramatically. German forces, demoralized by Patton's relentless pursuit, struggled to regain lost ground. The Allies, invigorated by the breakthrough, pressed their advantage. Units that had feared encirclement now coordinated offensives with renewed confidence. The morale shift was palpable. Men who had endured the harshest conditions in Bastogne now fought with renewed purpose. Inspired by both the audacity and the competence of their leaders, Eisenhower reflected privately on the complexity of leadership. The relief of Bastogne demonstrated that victory often required calculated risk and trust in subordinates capable of exceeding expectations. Patton had tested the boundaries of command, yet had delivered results that few imagined possible. Leadership, Eisenhower realized, was as much about inspiring confidence as it was about managing authority. For the Allied command, the second rehook underscored a vital lesson. In war, the combination of courage, skill, audacity could achieve what bureaucracy and caution alone never could. The morale of soldiers, the momentum of campaigns, and the fate of nations could hinge on the decisive actions of a single, extraordinary individual. And in this case, that individual was George S. Patton. His brilliance had forever changed the course of the Battle of the Bulge. With Bastogne secured and the Third Army pressing forward, the Allied front in the Ardennes began to stabilize. German advances had been halted, their initial momentum shattered by the speed and precision of Patton's counteroffensive. The corridor to Bastogne remained open, ensuring that the 101st Airborne and other surrounded units could receive continuous supplies and reinforcements, allowing them to hold their positions and even participate in the larger offensive. Eisenhower's confidence in Patton deepened, but it was a measured confidence. In private correspondence, he praised Patton's audacity while maintaining the boundaries of command. Patton had proven that he could achieve the impossible, but Eisenhower understood that unchecked brilliance could not replace strategy and coordination. Their relationship matured into one of cautious trust, based on demonstrated capability rather than promises. The operational impact was immediate and far-reaching. German units, reeling from unexpected assaults and disrupted supply lines, were forced into retreat. Key positions in the Ardennes were regained, and the Bulge's shape began to flatten. The Third Army's speed and aggressiveness became a model for mobile warfare, demonstrating that initiative and decisive action could reshape the battlefield in days rather than weeks. For the men on the ground, morale surged. Soldiers who had endured encirclement, cold, and constant bombardment now witnessed the tangible effects of leadership and audacity. The relief of Bastogne was more than a logistical victory. It was a psychological one. Confidence returned to the front lines, giving the Allies momentum that would carry through the final stages of the campaign. Eisenhower reflected on lessons learned. Patton's success highlighted the importance of trusting skilled commanders with clear objectives and the freedom to execute. It reinforced the value of audacity, foresight, and rapid decision-making in dynamic combat situations. At the same time, it underscored the need for balance. Even the most brilliant leaders must operate within a broader command structure to maximize effectiveness. The relief of Bastogne, followed by continued offensive operations, marked a turning point in the Battle of the Bulge. It was a testament to American ingenuity, courage, and operational excellence. Patton had not only saved thousands of soldiers, but it also redefined the limits of what could be achieved under pressure. The Third Army's performance set a standard for leadership, coordination, and daring that would echo throughout the European campaign. History would remember Bastogne as a moment of heroism, audacity, and tactical brilliance. And at the heart of it all was Patton, whose ability to combine foresight, speed, and decisive action ensured that the Allied forces could not only survive, but begin to turn the tide of the battle in their favor. News of Bastogne's relief spread quickly across Allied lines and beyond. Newspapers in the United States celebrated the daring rescue, portraying Patton's Third Army as a force capable of achieving the impossible. Headlines proclaimed the courage and skill of American soldiers, and the breakthrough became a symbol of hope during the darkest days of the Battle of the Bulge. Public morale soared, offering reassurance to a nation that had watched with growing anxiety as German forces threatened to split Allied armies. For Eisenhower, the fallout was both operational and personal. Public statements praised the bravery of the 101st Airborne and the effectiveness of Third Army's relief efforts, carefully balancing recognition to maintain cohesion and inspire confidence. Privately, Eisenhower reflected on the weight of command. The relief of Bastogne had averted potential catastrophe, but it had also reaffirmed the risks inherent in trusting bold, unpredictable subordinates. Patton's audacity had succeeded, but it reminded Eisenhower that extraordinary talent required careful guidance. The battlefield itself began to shift. German forces, now on the defensive, struggled to regroup. The rapid counteroffensive of the Third Army disrupted enemy supply lines, slowed reinforcements, and forced withdrawals from critical positions. Bastogne had become a turning point, not just for morale, but for the operational dynamics of the entire Ardennes campaign. The momentum, once firmly in German hands, had swung decisively to the Allies. For the men of the 101st Airborne, Bastogne's relief was more than a tactical victory. It was a personal vindication. They had endured days of encirclement, freezing temperatures, and relentless enemy pressure. The arrival of Patton's forces transformed despair into determination. Their survival and reinforcement became a testament to endurance, courage, and the strategic brilliance of their leaders. Historians would later note that the relief of Bastogne symbolized the synergy between audacious leadership and disciplined execution. Patton's operational boldness, combined with the steadfastness of the paratroopers and the strategic oversight of Eisenhower, demonstrated the decisive impact of coordination, planning, and morale in combat. Bastogne was a lesson that, in war, speed, initiative, and courage could decisively alter outcomes. By the end of December 1944. The Battle of the Bulge had begun to tilt in the Allies' favor. Bastogne's relief solidified confidence among Allied troops, disrupted German plans, and showcased the power of leadership under pressure. It's the audacity of Patton, the foresight of Eisenhower, and the courage of the paratroopers converged in a moment that would resonate through military history. The fallout was immediate, dramatic, and lasting, both on the battlefield and in the hearts of those who witnessed the extraordinary events unfold. As the snow settled over the Ardennes, the relief of Bastogne remained a defining moment in the Battle of the Bulge. Patton's audacious maneuver had not only saved thousands of surrounded soldiers, but it also shifted the momentum of the campaign. The combination of foresight, courage, and relentless execution demonstrated the heights that American leadership and military skill could achieve under the most extreme conditions. Eisenhower, reflecting on the events, recognized the complexity of commanding extraordinary talent. Patton's brilliance had come with challenges, but it had delivered results when they mattered most. The phone call that announced Bastogne's relief was more than a tactical update. It was a validation of trust, audacity, and the capacity to act decisively when the stakes were highest. For the soldiers on the ground, the victory restored confidence, resilience, and hope. The 101st Airborne, the paratroopers who had endured the siege, now stood reinforced and ready to continue the cute fight. Third Army's rapid advance and unyielding determination had demonstrated that even the harshest winter and the most daunting obstacles could not halt American resolve. Historically, Bastogne would be remembered as a testament to leadership, strategy, and courage. Patton's audacity, Eisenhower's judgment, of the endurance of the troops combined to create a defining moment in World War II. It proved that decisive action, bold planning, and unwavering determination could alter the course of battle and, in doing so, shape history itself. In the end, the relief of Bastogne was not just about territory or strategy. It was about trust, courage, and the extraordinary achievements possible when leaders and soldiers rise to the occasion. The lessons from Bastogne continue to inspire generations, a reminder that in the face of overwhelming odds, audacity and skill can prevail.